Hi, everybody. Oh, and Merry Christmas, too. My name is Mark Hilliard. I'm a master here on the Arcanum. And this evening we have the pleasure of doing Lys Olson's Level 10 critique. Oh, boy. We're going to be really hard and tough on you tonight, Lys.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Um, I'm really happy with the images that you've given us tonight. Very happy with the path that you've taken up through this point. Your growth has been amazing. I love your work, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. If you would, I'll let you give a brief introduction of yourself, and if you talk a little bit about the path from the level 4 to level 10, the floor is all yours.
Okay, I'm Liz, and I feel like I've grown a lot since level 4, especially like in my post-processing. I've really focused on paying more attention to what I'm doing after taking my images, using the Nick filter sets, really using the Vivisa and bringing out details and, kind of making my pictures a little bit better instead of only using the Adobe RAW and just basically Adobe Photoshop. I feel like every time I use Photoshop, I'm actually using the Nick filters, the Vivisa, and I definitely feel like they've helped my pictures be more successful. And yeah, I feel like I've grown a lot and like to see where I'm going after this. So.
Oh yeah, you most definitely have. And the photography, it's important to get everything right in the camera when you're at the scene. But the computer work is just as equally important as what you do in camera. I mean, if you go back to the olden days of chemistry and emulsions, you had to get it right in the camera then too, but the darkroom work was just as artfully done as what was done behind the lens, and one was just as important as the other. And the same is true here in the digital world. So with that, let's jump right into it here. Let me share my desktop. And you should have my desktop now.
Yep.
And we will bring up your first beautiful image. Tell us about this. And aside from the technical information, I would like to delve into the emotional and the pre-thought process as well. What were you thinking as you stood here and took in this scene before you ever picked up your camera?
This is actually a place that we teach some of our photography classes, and this morning that we drove up there is supposed to be a fall colors class, and when we pulled up, there's all this fresh snow, untouched, and it was just like one of those moments like, I got to get this picture before I do anything else. I really liked how clear it was, but also the reflection in the water really added symmetry to the image. And that location can be a little bit tricky with the mountains in the distance, because depending on where the sun is, they could all be in the shadow. But this day, it just seemed like they're lit up the best that I've ever seen. So it was one of those moments where you're like, want to get out of the car as fast as you can and get the picture before anything changes. So.
Well, it is a beautiful scene, and you have captured it perfectly. My first impression of looking at this is it's crisp and cold.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little bit of ice on the lake. Is that what I'm seeing, or is that slight wind blowing over the surface of the water?
No, that's a little bit of ice that's starting to form. This was late October.
All right. The composition is just perfect. You've placed this lower line here on the thirds, and you've placed the upper line across the top of the mountains on the upper third, and it's very, very pleasing. You've captured the reflection beautifully in the water. Um, I wouldn't make any changes whatsoever in this. The exposure is lovely. In fact, I went, and let's just bring this up. Let's bring up your raw image versus the post-processed image, and this is an example of getting it perfect in the camera before you even drop it in. All you've done when you did your editing was you brought out the highlights a little in these tree lines and down here in the reflections.
Yeah.
Okay, and the cloud structure, this might even be a contrail from an aircraft that's dissipating. It's been brought out. The white values are a little bit better. And this just goes to show how powerful an image can be if you get it right in camera at the very top of the creative process. This is absolutely lovely. And this is a solid 3+ image.
Thank you.
I am amazed at the clarity of this, your mastery of the physics of the exposure. You've just got everything perfect. I like the fact that you've brought out the snow on the trees, which was just a little bit darker in the raw image. And of course you've brought those highlights out in the reflection as well. I mean, it might have been a little better had we been able to be there on a day with clouds, but that would have cast shadows on these trees and spots.
Yeah.
This is just something that you would see in a postcard being mailed all over the world. It is just a perfect shot.
Thank you.
And it's very rare for me to not be able to come up with some manner of improvement for this, but for you've nailed this. Amazingly good image. Of course, we're all capable of this, but you in particular, this is the type of imagery that we're going to expect from you from now on.
Great, thank you.
So that is a solid 3+, okay? All right, let's talk about this one.
So that one was a night that my friends and I went out to shoot the Milky Way. And, you know, we try to get different vantage points, different locations up at our favorite mountain. And we decided to hike out. And there's, you know, very few people up there. And sometimes when you see, you know, headlights, so that little star in the bottom left, you're like, oh, is that going to hurt my picture? But I feel like that kind of helped my picture. And then the orange in the clouds is actually lights from the city, you know, about an hour away. And then I followed a tutorial online on how to help bring out the definition of the Milky Way, which to me was like literally night and day because it just brought out the Milky Way, made it feel 3D, really helped define it.
Which tutorial, what process did you apply to this?
In Adobe Raw, there was a couple steps that this photographer shared. Using, I don't remember what it's called. There's like a brush that you can paint, and you can bring out the details in that area that you paint, or the exposure, the clarity. So you boost up the clarity a little bit, and that really helped kind of define that shape and those colors.
I think it was William who shared another video tutorial with us a couple of weeks ago about doing multiple exposures and then stacking them to denoise the sky but yet bring out the stars as well. There is a lot of wonderful treasures out there on this style of photography. I'd love to see more work like this from you.
Yeah.
Um,
I love doing it because it's just, so different. Not everybody goes out at 10 or 11 o'clock at night to shoot the sky and sit in the dark.
yeah, we've got a bit of light pollution down here. I take it that this is from the town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's from
But it's
Denver.
nice, though.
Yeah.
There was this cloud layer to capture that light and reflect it back down. That adds a real foreground presence that makes this image really jump out at you.
Hmm.
I don't think it would be nearly as powerful without these clouds.
Yeah, I agree. The
Um,
clouds definitely bring it together.
Now, your raw, this is one of the images you don't have the raw image for.
Right.
Do you happen to remember what your aperture was on this? I mean, I could go and bring up the EXIF data here, but
Might have been around like 5.6,
all
my
right,
aperture.
because you still got a fairly decent starburst from these headlights.
Yeah, usually I shoot shallower, somewhere around there.
Okay, and the good starburst from a point source light shining into the objective it is better defined with a smaller aperture.
Hmm.
But then that defeats the point of trying to shoot the Milky Way as well,
Yeah.
because you got to keep the exposure shorter than 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Stop the motion blur of the rotation of the Earth and the stars. But I really like this, and you're right. I think that this starburst of light actually adds. It's like a counterbalance of the stars in the sky,
Hmm.
and it works very well for me. Now, is this the usual that you would see in the clouds over this mountain range?
Yeah. And then that'd be very similar light coming up from the city.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the clouds kind of come and go up there, and pretty quickly too.
Okay. Well, this is stunning, and I like the use of the foreground ridge. You've kept that small and down to the bottom of the image. It wouldn't have worked had you dropped this V off the bottom. So this is just perfect.
Hmm.
The exposure and the noise on the sky looks really quite good, and this is a bit of a longer exposure. I'm starting to see a little bit of the lights turning into jelly beans.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. It's nice and clean. And you know what? You did capture a meteor there. It's real dim, but
Yeah.
yeah, you did get one way off in the distance. No, very, very nice. You've got the deep blue with the sky. This works very well. And I love the coloring that you've captured in the Milky Way itself.
Hmm.
Now, was it a long hike to get up here?
Oh no, you drive up there, and then that's like a 5-minute walk.
Oh, okay.
So anybody can do it.
All right. Well, this isn't bad. This isn't bad at all. God, I could even do that, I guess.
Oh yeah, but it's at like 11 or 12,000 feet,
Mm-hmm.
so higher altitude, thinner
Yep.
air.
Yeah, I'll just have to take an air bottle with me, right?
Yeah.
No, this is a lovely image, and it was well worth the effort. Your exposure's dead on. I like the composition, but what I really like about this, of course, I like the stars. I like the Milky Way, but I really love this cloud bank catching the light pollution.
Hmm.
You've got a little bit of detail here, a little bit of snow I'm seeing on this ridge. It's not totally black and silhouetted. I am seeing structure in here.
Hmm.
This works really, really well. You have a lot to be proud of here. This is a wonderful image, and it was well worth the effort. And I'm going to give you a 3 on that. It's very low noise, very good highlighting of the stars. And when's the next time you're going up there?
Well, we have to wait for a new moon and a clear sky. So,
Yeah,
um, could be a couple weeks, possibly.
I do like this. Good job.
Thanks.
Good job, Liz. All right, Telluride. Tell me about this one.
So this was, I took a 3 or 4 day weekend and went down to Telluride. Um, for years, I'd been wanting to go down there and check out the fall colors, and this year, I was like, I'm gonna do it. So I went down and slept in my car, and basically camped out and got up every morning to go take pictures. And the last night that I was down there, we had gotten some snow, and it was supposed to be like 90% chance of rain that day. And so I had caught this right between storms, and
Oh, wow.
it was just kind of one of those drives where everywhere you go, you're like, oh my God, I gotta stop and take more pictures. And
Mm-hmm.
these mountains were pretty far away, and usually I don't think about taking like landscape or mountain pictures through a telephoto, but this time I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it out and see what happens. And I feel like I was successful. And the thing I really like about this is that I feel like the mountains just seem so grand in this image, and just kind of tower over the trees in the valley.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I wouldn't have even guessed that you used a telephoto on this.
hmm
You know what I'm doing here?
Looking for noise.
I'm looking for dust spots on your
Oh
scene.
yeah, I went through and fixed them. I had a couple on the right
Still
side.
check every few pictures. We still got to check that.
Yeah.
Good cleaning job. Well, I love the composition, and I love the layout of this. And using the telephoto was a good choice in this.
hmm
But unfortunately, when you choose to use a telephoto over vast distances, you will decrease the overall image contrast.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you: did you have the lens hood on?
Um, I don't remember. It might have because it was raining or trying to rain,
Hmm.
but I don't remember for sure.
All right, because if you don't use the lens hood, light striking the objective from angles
hmm
will bounce around inside the objective lens, and it will drastically lower the contrast.
Yeah.
Okay. Having said that, the exposure is right on the mark. You couldn't have done better. The composition is just perfect. The scene is amazing. The clouds give it mood and depth.
hmm
We've got these contrasting areas that I call my ladder steps to lead me into the image, lights and darks, as a set of stairs that we can walk into the image visually with. But the image is lacking in contrast.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of fault. So if you don't mind, I want to try an experiment on it.
Oh yeah.
According to Pam, I'm going to go into my meme, and I am going to jump into the Nick filters. All right. And normally on really clean color images, we can forego Vivisa
hmm
and go right into tonal contrast inside of Color Effects Pro 4 and play with the midtones and the shadows. Yeah, the shadows is what's bringing it back. Do you see that?
hmm
And where it's really affecting it, and you don't want to go too far. You got to watch the sky. So I bring in too many shadows, I'm destroying the sky.
Yeah.
But if I get the mountains and the landscape where I want it, and this, and the sky is ruined, you can grab a negative control point here and put on the sky to bring it back into where it should be. And then just copy that control point across the sky to bring that back. Now let's look at the before and the after. And it's minor, but look at the difference in the foreground and in the clouds. And if you don't like what it's doing to the clouds, you can also take a negative control point and drop it onto the clouds. And then you can adjust the opacity to balance between the two.
Okay.
Okay? So it's a very strong tool. Yeah, see where that's really dark? We'll take that back and we'll get rid of this control point. And we'll take this really dark area of the clouds back to where it was in the original post-processing. But I think that that makes a big difference. One other thing that you might want to look at here is the nice thing about Color Effects Pro is you can stack filters on top of each other, stack recipes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add a stack layer, and I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna play with the white neutralizer a little, and I'm gonna select the whites. I'm gonna just experiment and see what I like, because the overall image being as misty as it is, there we go. It's just a little bit too blue.
Mm-hmm.
So you can play by selecting where you want to use as a base point for the white neutralizer, and you can bring it in to any of the color areas that you personally like.
Yeah.
Including the whites. Let's let that crunch for a minute. You can shift down to the warmer tones. Okay, so there's all kinds of things that you can do with this, but this might be something that you want to play with down the line.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you see how bringing up the overall contrast of the foreground and enhancing the contrast of this side of the mountain faces gives the image slightly more pop?
Yeah.
A little bit goes a long way here, and it's something that you would need to experiment, but I highly recommend playing with Color Effects Pro.
Okay.
The color contrast, or the tonal contrast, is an easy one to experiment with. See, we haven't changed it much when I go back and forth between the two. Another good one to play with is the contrast color range, but that's usually, in scenes like this, way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that just doesn't work here. So we'll go back here, and we will turn the tonal contrast back on, turn off the color contrast. We will add another filter. And one more I'd like to share with you, if you haven't played with it, is the detail extractor. Now, this can really go overboard really, really fast. So a little bit of this goes a long, long way. So take the detail extractor slider and just start to move it up. We're looking for a very minor change. See, if I go up too far, I start to get blotchiness in the sky.
Yeah.
And it actually washes out the mountain range. So let's, yeah, that's very minor. So these are things that you can play with, okay?
Okay.
Knowing that if you use a telephoto, it is going to lower the contrast when you're shooting mountains through mist.
Mm-hmm.
and all mountains have a mist over the top of them. So that's also something for you to consider. Now, you see this spot right here?
Yeah.
It almost looks blown out, but it's not. It's a trick on the eye based on the colors. You might consider going into Vivisa and just slightly darkening this area here. Now, it is not blown out.
Yeah.
Repeat that. But it tricks us into thinking it is, and my eyes keep getting drawn back here again and again and again. Just so maybe darkening that one little spot slightly would stop that from happening.
Okay.
But this is a really good image because it gives us an opportunity to play with the Nick filter suit again, which Pam will continue to tease me on. I'm going to give this a 2.5.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Only because I would like to see a little bit more work in the post-processing on this.
Okay.
It is just, it really does lack contrast down here. And a lot of times when we're shooting through mist in the mountains, that happens. But it's not going to hurt. It's not going to do anything but improve the image to just slightly exaggerate the contrast a wee bit in this area, okay?
Okay. Yeah, I remember I did a lot of work on those pine trees down there.
Ooh, infrared.
Yep.
Let's talk about this one. I want to know about, what was in your mind. I want to know about the camera, too, how it was set up.
So this is my old D300 with an R72 filter on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a custom white balance. So I had that preset on my camera. And then for post-processing, I ended up following your tutorial, your two tutorials that you have online.
Okay.
And I was just amazed, at what I could bring out, like the color and.
Yeah, you're hooked.
Yeah.
You are. This is great. Another one joins the evil club.
Yep.
What did you white balance on? Custom white balance.
It's been a while since I've done it because I just saved it as a preset.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been, was it green grass? I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's.
Yeah. The green grass is going to give a better result than a pine tree.
Yeah.
But this is very nice also. I love the effect on the sky.
Mm-hmm.
How we're graduating up from a lighter blue up to almost black. This adds a moodiness to this image that just can't be overstated.
Mm-hmm.
Your editing for your false color on the trees and the grass is just perfect. Did you desaturate the building at all?
No, that's how it came out.
Okay. A future hint for you would be to put a control point on this in Vivisa.
Yeah.
And desaturate the wood.
Okay.
And then add a little bit of warmth to it. There's a warmth slider buried in Vivisa also.
Okay.
Other than that, this is an amazing example of really great infrared photography.
Thanks.
This works very good. And for 720 nanometer filter, you got a surprising amount of color.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it. I'm proud of you. I can't wait to see your new camera in action.
I know, me too.
And this is a solid 3. The exposure's great. The composition is just beautiful. The scene is perfect, and your treatment of the false color post processing, while highly subjective, is well done.
Thanks. I enjoyed doing it, and your tutorial was great. It was easy to follow. And the whole time I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. You're the only ones that get access to that free.
Cool.
Everybody else has to pay $29.95 for those, but the Arcanum people get that for free.
Hmm.
Um, and then lastly, I saved this for last. I was trying to explain to William how you were using water drops as lenses.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's still here watching this. But uh, tell me about this. What was your intent?
Um, I've always, like when I've done water droplet pictures, I've always put the water droplets on another flower. And after doing, looking for inspiration, Ken, I don't even remember how to pronounce his last name, but he used like branches and parts of flowers instead of, the whole flower itself. And so I was like, I'll try something different. And then also I learned how to do focus stacking. So after doing that, I was hooked on that because it makes a world of a difference
Mm-hmm.
having everything inside the water droplet in focus instead of, half of it or a third of it. And I was kind of trying to push myself and be like, okay, instead of one twig, how about two? How about three? Let's see what happens.
Uh-huh.
Um, so actually in my setup, I had 3 broken twigs taped together and kind of in a little stand, and they're probably about 2 or 3 inches maybe in front of the Gerber daisy,
Mm-hmm.
and then just using a water spritzer and waiting until I had the right amount of water droplets that looked good to me. And then for shooting it, I did focus stacking, and I was doing that manually. And so it was anywhere, usually when I shot, it was anywhere from 11 to 13 pictures that I ended up taking for each final product.
All right. And what size would you say the droplets are?
Um, in real life, probably maybe half the size of a ladybug,
Okay.
so pretty small.
All right. Now, and this is not a crop.
I only cropped the edges. I don't remember who it was, but they recommended there's a little blur around the edges, and so I ended up cropping the image slightly to get rid of that.
All right. All right. Amazing clarity, amazing control. I would like to introduce you to glycerin.
Mm-hmm.
If you add a bit of glycerin to your water, it will thicken it and allow the drops to be more easily controllable.
Yeah.
You can also go, you can't find this in a normal CVS drugstore, but if you go to a little country or town drugstore, they sell something called heavy water.
Hmm.
And it's water made for people that can't swallow. And it's real thick and viscous. And you can take eyedroppers of it and place a drop of water strategically wherever you want them.
Oh, cool.
And they will stay in place.
Yeah.
All right? And the glycerin and the heavy water will both lens beautifully.
Okay.
All right?
And where do you find the glycerin?
Oh, God, you can find that anywhere.
Okay.
Any drugstores will sell glycerin.
Okay.
All right, it's just a clear liquid and comes in a bottle.
Okay.
All right. I like your choice of 3. That is a very pleasing composition. Look at the depth of field that you have achieved here. And the lensing effect. This is just perfect. I like this as a starting image. Oh, this is beautiful too. What is this in the background beyond the flower I'm seeing?
Well, the white is probably the reflection from my light.
Okay.
Black is, I have like a big kind of, I don't know, science board. It's a foam board, kind of set up as my backdrop that is matte finish.
All right. Yeah, this is a wonderful piece. Well, exception of these right here.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, dirt.
Yeah, well, it happens to the best of us, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I like the overall composition. I like the fact that you're showing almost the total flower in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite the total, but yet when you look at the lensing effect on each droplet, we're seeing the whole flower, and it is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous, exceptionally well done. I could sit and look at this image for hours and see something different every time I scrolled across. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I said, this is a starting image.
Yeah.
It's a good starting image, and it's a 3. Okay?
Okay.
But I would like to challenge you for your next attempt at this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see closer and tighter.
Okay.
I want to see something like this right here.
Okay.
As seen in this screen. I want you to expand on what you're doing in this macro world. I mean, just even like this.
Yeah.
Okay? What lens are you using?
Sigma 105 macro.
Okay, so that will go down to 1:1.
Yeah, and then 2 extension tubes.
Aha. Okay. Yeah. How much closer can you get to the subject with that lens? Where are you at in the focusing range?
I think that's actually as close as I can get. For some reason, my 3rd extension tube, like it won't let me stack 3 of any combination. For some reason, it used to, but it won't anymore.
Sounds like a communication problem on the wiring in the tubes.
Yeah.
Another thing that you could do to modify it, what's the filter diameter on the end of the lens?
I'm not sure. Because it's one where the lens is like inverted. It's like a 10 or 12-year-old macro.
Yeah, but it's not something huge. It's like 77, 72, 67 millimeters.
Yeah.
You could try dropping a Canon 500D on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not be a bad choice as well. William will have some suggestions for you for getting closer and tighter with that lens. I'm not really familiar with it. It may not go down to 1:1. Mm-hmm. Since you've got 2 extension tubes on it now, probably what, a 25 and a 10?
I think a 35. Is it 35 and 14 maybe? Something like that. It's the 2 of the larger in a set of 3.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, maybe it's time to invest in a new set of tubes too.
Mm-hmm.
But clean the connectors on the lens and on the tubes. That might fix your problem.
Okay.
But I would love to see tighter work.
Yeah.
And it's okay that we can't see the flower in the background because of the bokeh.
Yeah.
But even here, this tight, we've got a sense that it's back there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lovely work. Your work in water lensing has always been spectacular.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Yeah, and in college for my thesis, part of it I used Caro syrup.
Okay.
That was a mess. But you'd get big water droplets.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But you'd have strings and whatnot after a while.
Try the glycerin.
Okay.
And try finding boxes of the heavy water.
Okay.
If you walk into the drugstore and tell the pharmacist that you're looking for heavy water, thickened water for people that can't swallow.
Yeah.
And tell them you just want clear water. You don't want any flavors.
Okay.
It comes in those little pint boxes our kids get in elementary school.
Yeah.
All right, and you will love it. It works very well.
Okay.
Okay. There are some soaps that you can add, and I can give you a list of those later on that will help thicken the water too and enable it to hold on better.
Okay.
That I use in my high-speed water drop collisions. Most soaps don't work, but there's one from England that works very well.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
That you can buy on Amazon. Oh, I just love this in the detail. Yeah, I'd like to see more of this, but I would truly love to see it tighter and closer.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, maybe one drop, maybe two, or even three.
Mhm.
You have the ability. You should take that out and exercise that.
Yeah, I'd like to figure out how to magnify it more, get closer.
Well, that's just going to be a matter of lens.
Yeah.
And since you have your macro lens, and you need to look it up. Hold on a second. Let's do that. What lens do you have?
The Sigma 105.
This one here?
Yeah, the 2.8 for Nikon.
Let's just look at the specs on it here real quick. Usually, alpha, APS-C. Oh, it goes to 1x.
Mm-hmm.
See, 1-to-1. So if you slap those extension tubes on, you were at less than. I mean, was it all the way out at 1-to-1?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had to be less than 1-to-1 then. I would say that the lens is a fine starting point. Replace those extension tubes or clean the contacts, okay?
Yeah. What a different length of macro lens. Is there anything that would magnify it more, you think?
There aren't very many lenses that will go down past 1-to-1.
Yeah.
All right. There are some. Canon has a 65 that is a micro lens.
Mm-hmm.
And William can tell you about that.
Yeah, he was telling me about one that only for Canon, unfortunately.
But that's going to put you right on top of the drops. I mean, you're going to be an inch away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the water drops aren't as small as the fly's eye, so you're going to be a little bit further away.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say the extension tubes and a close-up diopter.
Okay.
Believe it or not, the close-up diopter is not going to give you a light hit, whereas the extension tubes do, because they act like taking a movie camera and moving it away from the screen. How the image gets bigger on the screen and actually goes off the edges.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the extension tubes work.
Okay.
There's lots of things and lots of books out there that will tell you good ways to do this. Canon has a little macro catalog. Well, it's not a catalog. It's a training book, but it's like a catalog.
Yeah.
And it's out of print, and you will have trouble finding it. But look in the old camera stores, and you'll usually run across a copy or two. It's done in bright yellows and blues, I think, on the cover.
Okay.
And it's the size of a magazine. Extension tubes and close-up diopter. That's the best. We also need to get you a macro rail.
I ordered one. The one, I don't remember who it was. The $25 one that somebody recommended.
Okay.
Haven't had a chance to play with it yet.
Because the type of macro work you're doing, you can do on your kitchen table.
Yep, and that's what I've been doing.
So a macro rail would work. It'd make your work so much easier to do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, so let me close this down. Let me bring this back up. My doggy's yelling at me. Let me stop this. Well done. Let me stop the broadcast so you don't have to listen to her.